Turn the fan on. Way too hot in here. And hello. How is everybody doing? How's things? How's life? How's yours? How has your week been? What has everybody been up to? I've been up to a lot. What have I been doing? What did I do? What video did I do on Monday? How have I already forgotten this? Oh, it was the Zoom board. It was the Zoom board I did on Monday. That was it. And I've already moved on several steps ahead. Hello, John. Gotta have a beer and need it after today. Understandable. And hello, Simon S63. How you doing, man? How's things? Missed last week's stream. Had to take the wife and daughter to the local shopping centre. Nice. What? Oh, it closed the system trade, didn't it? I tried to disable or shut Thunderbird down there so that she wouldn't hear those emails, but it might still be open, and I can't quite tell. It's power to. Oh, I can't see it in here. Well, you're gonna have to deal with it. So I'm sorry. But yeah, how is everybody doing? How's things? What have I been doing? Yeah, so I did the Zoom board review. Finished that on Monday, and you'll see that tomorrow. So last week I talked a lot about the Zima board. It's upstairs, so I can't hold it, show it to you. But it was the sort of Raspberry Pi in a fancy case with a PCIe slot. And after some more consideration, my my opinion of it changed a little bit. It's still a bit of a weird product, but essentially, if you think of it as a 2-bay NAS without the enclosure, it starts to make a lot more sense. So yeah, that's the sort of conclusion I came to, which helps it make a bit more sense than it perhaps otherwise did. So you'll see that video tomorrow. Monday's video I've already forgotten. I think it's a monitor review that I just finished. AOC, in fact, actually, it's a really interesting monitor. It is a 24-inch 1440p monitor. AOC Q24 G2A. And yeah, it's 24-inch 1440p. Like, I don't think we've seen that before. Like, we've seen 1440p and 1600p laptops, which are, 14, 15, 16, 17 inches. But 24-inch at 1440p is really pretty rare. And so it's a unique sight to behold, perhaps. I think it has 123 pixels per inch, which, whereas a 27-inch 1440p display is 109. And a 1080p 24-inch monitor is just 92 pixels per inch, so it is a significant improvement over 1080p at the same size. Hello to WAP, how you doing? How's things? Hello Ish, and hello Zig. How you guys doing? How's things? So yeah, that's I guess that's Monday's video. And then the thing that I'm working on next is this, which is a, is it too bright? I'm gonna focus on this. This is a Zigbee smart switch. It is battery powered via a standard CR2032 that you can buy, in your local shops. It has 4 buttons, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And, yeah, it actually, works, which is remarkable. It has a base plate that you can stick to your wall or screw to your wall, and it can mount to. But it's quite nice that you can take it off and have it as a controller, and then, dock it back on the wall, so that it has a place to stay, but you can still move it around. And these work a lot better than the Mo's Zigbee smart switches, or scene changers, I think, as Mo's calls them. Yeah, I'm happy with these, and I think they're even cheaper. So yeah, that's pretty good. Just a PSA to set up a known/common phrase with family members. Just had a thankfully failed AI scam attempt on parents, aka synthesized voice notes based on my sister's voice. Wow, that is like insanely insidious. God, that's got to be so specific. Wow. But yes, that your suggestion of a known passphrase or common phrase is a very good idea. Especially in this day and age. But even just in like text message scan, like the original text message format, where it's like, "Hi, mom," and like, I lost my phone and I, whatever, can I have $100 to like get home or something? Um, yeah. Wild. I want to replace my two 1080p AOC monitors with one larger 1440p monitor, but I can't decide what to go for. Honestly, oh, it depends on your budget, right? Like, generally speaking, that was IPS, and generally speaking, anything budget would be IPS. Anything less budget would be an OLED. But yeah, yeah. Tell me a bit more about your budget, use case, etc., and I might be able to help, or really offer suggestions. This was for £10,000. Jesus, no. No. Yeah, no. I'll refrain from timing out Essen during this week. Good, if he ever turns up. Mohammed, want to ask the difference between motherboards like Z, H, and B series. So, you've laid them out in the right order. I think. Was it H? No, it's ZBH, I think. Anyway, the purpose is basically to separate out some features, or more specifically, the Z series boards are the fully featured, everything that you can think of that platform supports, but it's the most expensive. The B and H series boards are the lower tier, where some of the features have been flicked off, such that you get less features overall, but you get a lower price point. Generally speaking, for most people, a B760 board, for example, is perfectly fine. As long as you're not overclocking, generally speaking, you're getting a better value from a B series board because for the majority of basic builds, you're not making use of all that many extra features, and especially if you're not overclocking, you're getting a better value for money. That's more money you can spend on a graphics card, or more storage space, or more RAM, or higher end processor, or a better cooler, things like that. So generally speaking, that would be where I would hello, Dr. Cutters. No one should overclock. A hill I'll die on. I kind of agree. Like, I mean, it's up to everybody else. Whatever they want to do, but I don't overclock my processors. When I had Ryzen, because I've switched off because I've broken all my Ryzen boards, I would often play with the PBO settings, but that's less overclocking, more just moving the limits. So yeah, yeah, I wouldn't personally. Especially these days. Although actually, as it hasn't come up yet, but as Ish says, and it will come up in the chat at some point, overclocking used to make a big difference in the right chip with good cooling. Nowadays, not really. Like, you can, but yeah. I used to be world number 2 on HarborBot in 2013-ish. No one should need to overclock. Fair. Back on Haswell, the 4770K, it was kind of fun, helped a little, but yeah, no. I think overclocking on like mid-range stuff, like overclocking the i5, like I get it more than overclocking the i9, because you buy the i5 because you you buy the i5 because you can't afford the i9, right? Whatever. So you buy it so that you can overclock it, so you can get the most out of it. I kind of, I respect that. That hustle, Whereas, yeah, on the higher end front, hello Simon. How you doing, man? How's things? Um, Alex, is a VA monitor bad? It's not necessarily bad. It has its benefits, mostly in black levels. So the way monitors work is you have backlights or LCD liquid crystal displays. Is you have a backlight layer, you have the liquid crystal layer, and that backlight is effectively constantly shining light through that pixel layer. With a VA panel, it's very good at rejecting almost all of that light, so that when you see black on the screen, it actually looks like it's black. It looks like it's off. Whereas with an IPS panel, a lot of that light still bleeds through, and so you get a lot lower contrast. The darker shades all kind of blend into one shade really quite badly, and so that's something that's a benefit of a VA panel. The downside is that it's very good at blocking the light, but it also takes an awful long time to open the shutters to let the light through, especially at that dark range, and so you get visible ghosting quite regularly, quite visibly, and it means that it's a lot harder to aim at moving objects because you have multiple copies on screen at once, and while you're not necessarily seeing those multiple copies, it mostly acts like a blur to your eyes, and so it's even harder to actually aim or game on it. And so for me personally, my personal preference, I would prefer IPS a considerable amount more. But people who care more about that contrast ratio and the black levels tend to prefer VA panels instead. I have an Acer VA monitor, it's okay, but could be better. Fair. Acer XF248H. Okay, fair. That's not too bad. And obviously, there's always something better you could buy. As Wapta says, just get an OLED if you have a grand to spare. No one needs more than a phone/laptop or a console. Yeah. Yeah. But where's the fun in that? I agree with no overclocking my main rig, but do enjoy having some fun. Totally understandable. I think that is what overclocking has become these days. It's less, you need to do this to make the most out of the product you've purchased, versus I want to have some fun and see how far I can push this and develop skills to push this. I think that's the transition we've sort of gone through. Because out of the factory, they're already so, you might say tightly wound, that it often doesn't make that much of a difference, especially on the new Intel stuff. And I mean, overclocking on AMD really is just PBO these days. So, yeah. Still waiting on OLED 1440p 32-inch monitors. Fair. I don't remember seeing any, actually, now that I think about it. Off the top of my head, anyway. There's a few 27-inch ones. I went from a 6400 to an i7 980 equivalent Xeon to a 3800. Make it make sense. Well, it's you, so there you go. Do motherboards have effects on your FPS? So generally speaking, the answer is no. Especially these days. Occasionally, some motherboards can have some effect, but realistically, in the grand scheme of things, your graphics card has a much larger impact on your performance. And motherboards generally don't do anything to improve or impede graphics cards. Your CPU also has an effect on your performance, and as long as the motherboard you buy matches the CPU you buy relatively well, which realistically most boards, as long as you're not buying the absolute cheapest, lowest tier, worst board, it's likely to support your whatever CPU you pick pretty well, because why would they want to sell you a board that can't handle, any chip in the line? And so, that's fine. Some of them have things like they'll by default they'll tweak the settings. They'll tweak um, the power limits automatically for you, which might uh, do give you some extra performance, but also could your what you call it? Love them. My brain goes blank. I know we were talking about motherboards. Power settings, right? If you have good cooling, then it can give you some extra performance without you having to do anything. But yeah, a motherboard isn't for gaining FPS; it's to stop losing FPS when shit happens. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. All right. HeyDex25. Hi, Andy. Will an aim-based instead of mouse click latency ever be added to OS LTT? Recent tests show better accuracy than muzzle flashes. So yes, we were talking about this on our Discord server, which if I would welcome you to join on the OS RTT OS LTT support channel. At some point, I might have to break that out into support and chat, like support and like feature requests or whatever discussion. But long story short, yes, we're talking about it. Yes, it's something that I want to add. I'm not sure if it's going to be in this update or the next one. The update that I'm currently working on is the pre-testing for games. So it will test your system latency first, and then it will test. Then it will tell you to launch your game, do whatever test, and then it can subtract your average system latency from each of the results to give you a bit of a closer understanding of what the game is doing, rather than what your, the mouse or the device that's doing the clicking or moving or whatever, and the render time, and then your system, system and monitor, is doing. So that's the current one. I have started doing that feature, but there's a lot of testing and validation that I need to do to make sure all the features work, and so I can't guarantee when it will be a thing, but I do intend for it to be a thing, and in the not too distant future. As a point, you should definitely check out the channel on our Discord, because we talked a fair bit about it, but there is a limit to how far you can move at any one time, so you might need to change your sensitivity in the game to do that. I just realized you're talking about mouse latency, aren't you? Or wait, you said muzzle flash. Can you confirm if you're talking about like mouse latency or game latency? Because if you're talking about game latency, that's one that I'm definitely doing. Mouse latency, like mouse movement latency, is a lot more difficult because I don't know how to detect you've moved the mouse. Maybe just like tapping it, but that's not very loud, unlike a click. So, yeah. No, I'm talking about game latency. Perfect. In that case, then yes, I have hopefully 2 updates coming for you that will help with that. One, like I said, the pre-test, and then the mouse movement is something that I'm planning on adding. I'm a very broken individual, and so relying on any specific times is not something I would recommend from me. Uh, planning for CES yet? I don't leave the house, so no. um, like I said, I'm a very broken individual. And so yeah, I don't really go to events these days. I'm a paid shill. I might as well be a booth babe. I just looked. My monitor is actually TN. What's that? And Ian says TN twist cinematic. Yeah, so it's kind of the oldest of the three main panel types, being TN, VA, and IPS. And yeah, it was always generally known for having the fastest response times. Although these days IPS is doing pretty good. But it does have things like terrible viewing angles normally, and things like color accuracy and color gamut coverage and that sort of stuff isn't normally great. Mohammed, no worries. I mean, that's what this is what these streams are for you to ask questions. So ask away, as many as you like, within reason. I'll wait for you to finish because it looks like you're there's more stuff to go. Did I miss any questions? Can't you just set the device to falsely input mouse movement? No sensitivity change required. It would move 1 cm, for example, then back to the original position, do that again. So the long story short is no, the Arduino library for the mouse emulation only lets you move a certain value at a time, and I think it's an 8-bit value, which is the problem, so you can only move 127 counts at a time. I don't know exactly how far that equates to, but it's not a lot of movement. I can make it move, you know, start reading, move, stop reading, move back, repeat, and that will be what it will do eventually, but yeah, there's a finite amount of movement that the Arduino library can do at any one time, and if you do it multiple times, you're sending multiple inputs, and so you're no longer just measuring the latency of an input, you're measuring the latency of 5 inputs dressed in a trench coat. Mohammed, so is there a difference again between assembling a PC, for example, an i5 1200F and a 3060, or an i5 1200F and a 4090? So if I understand your question is, well, I'm gonna go with, there's two possible interpretations I have here. One is there a physical difference between building that? Oh no, question, I mean, if it doesn't affect the CPU, have effect that the CPU can't handle the graphics performance. Right, so would a 12400 be bottlenecked, or would a 12400 bottleneck a 4090? So this is something that I talk about almost every stream, actually. So bottlenecking isn't as black and white as I think a lot of people think it is, and that it's often perhaps made out to be. If you take those two configurations you have there, right? So you have a 1200F with a 3060, and you have a 1200F with a 4090. The 4090 system is going to give you significantly more performance than the 3060 based system. Now, if you were to put a i9 12900K in that same system with the 4090, you would get more performance. Technically speaking, that means that the 12400 is bottlenecking that 4090, right? Because you've improved the CPU and you've gotten more performance. But if you were to put the 12900K in the 3060 system, you would still likely get more performance. Not anywhere near as much, but it's about that balance. So generally speaking, the 12400F and 3060 combination you have there is seen as a good pair. They're a good match for each other, and while you can improve one or the other to get more performance, you're not necessarily hampering either part too much. A 12400F and a 4090 will still work. It will still run. You'll still get great performance, but you are likely limiting the 4090's performance to such a degree that you would call it bottlenecking, and that it would be too much of an offset to make sense as a purchase. You would want to put 13600K or 12600K, I guess, you know, for more performance to even that out a bit. So long story short, it would still work, but generally speaking, you want to balance those pairs a little bit better. Does IPS contrast affect IPS glow perception? Good question. Let me decode what that means in my head. I would think so. I would say that the better the contrast, obviously, generally speaking, essentially the less IPS glow you have. What I found in testing, because I've been testing quite a few monitors recently, is that IPS glow is mostly something you notice when you have something else to reference against. So when I have multiple monitors, like I have an ultra-wide OLED as my primary display these days, and I now have a TN monitor, vertically mounted, don't ask, and an IPS monitor, and it's very clear to me that the IPS monitor has a distinct lack of contrast in comparison to the OLED, which can physically turn off each individual pixel. However, when I have the monitors upstairs and I just have that monitor on its own, you know, I'm testing that just as it is, it's a lot less noticeable. It's a lot less something that I visibly care about when looking at it on its own. It also depends on the brightness of the room, because I normally film with, you know, bright studio lights for filming with, but that also means that you know, you are that contrast is a lot less of a problem because everything else is so bright. Whereas when I turn the lights off for any filming or testing or just, you know, whatever, it's a lot more obvious, because you then notice just how dark the surrounding area is and how bright the monitor is, even when it's meant to be functionally black. I just got a panel with a round, presumable 1400:1 contrast ratio. It does appear to have less perceivable glow, but not sure if it's panel lottery due to contrast. So, IPS glow is directly... The definition of IPS glow is how much light the panel lets through when it's meant to be black. And contrast ratio is black levels versus white levels. Now, if a panel can get really bright, sometimes it doesn't quite matter how, you know, if it can get 1000 nits at peak brightness, and it's only 1 nit at black, which is actually really bad, you know, that's still 1000:1 contrast ratio. If it's only 200 nits, then it has to be 0.2 nits black to get 1000:1, I think. So there is a trick to it, but generally speaking, decreasing the black levels even slightly nets you a much better contrast ratio. That's how VA panels get such a good contrast ratios, because the black levels are just a bit lower, but that makes all the difference in that ratio calculation. And so yeah, the long story short is if you do have 1400 to 1 contrast ratio, that likely means that you do have less IPS glow. You have less light coming through the panel when it's meant to be black. Hello Harry and hello Joe. How you guys doing? How's things? I looked through the Discord. It seems like someone already did a custom firmware version which moves the mouse. You know how they did it? Maybe you should speak to them. Thanks. I was part of the conversation, yeah. And that's what I was telling you to look at. Yes, I know how they did it. That doesn't mean that I can release it to the like 50 people who have bought one without actually doing it, like making the changes, testing it, seeing if I can improve that implementation, also adding settings to change what like how you control that, again testing that sort of control scheme. Like, it's open source, so if you want to mess with it, please do, as you've seen people already have. But there's a difference between being able to have a quick hack to test something yourself and me releasing a production update to like 50 people who've paid, 150 quid for a hardware unit. Yeah. Just ship it straight to production, no testing. Let's get this merged. So yeah, there you go. Just found a 120 gig SSD on my desk under some post and an S20 Ultra. Chris, everybody. Straight to production, then blame everyone else. Do it the Apple way. That's just every software developer. Yeah. Like, there is a limit to how much testing I will do, because I have ADHD and I can't focus on anything. But if I'm gonna do something, I try and do it properly. And if I get 80% of the way there, that's better than not doing it. But just releasing a straight firmware switch would be 10% of the way there. You run your 3 unit tests at least, though, right? Funnily enough, no. Because this is a hardware device, and so I have to actually test it. Yeah. Since we're talking about the tools and their code, one thing that I've changed between the response time tool and the latency tool, that if, like, it doesn't really matter, but if I could go back and change it, or if I can, it's code, I can update it, but if I wanted to go back and change something, it would be how I change or control the settings between the desktop and the the board. On the response time tool, I kind of did it just individual settings, and so it has like an initialization, sort of handshake procedure where it says it's got like what firmware version. The desktop app goes, cool, here are all these settings that we have preset, and it just does them one by one. So when it receives one, it then sends back the next. Or actually, I think I changed it so that the board, the software just says, hey, tell me what you want. The board then replies just with each one, and the software just saves it, and then can reset it up later. Whereas on the latency tool, The interesting thing is that I changed it to basically just be an 8-bit byte, where it still says the letter I, because that's how I navigate the menu tree. For initialization, but then it has 7 bytes worth of up to hexadecimal, depending on the value, to configure itself, and it's all done in that 1 byte. So all of the settings for what test source you want to use, so whether that's DirectX, games, external, the audio test, what sensor you want, so the light sensor or the audio sensor, or the microphone, what like trigger method, whether that's audio, button, or the 2-pin inputs. If you're using auto click, how many clicks, time between clicks, all of that is handled just in those 8 bytes. Well, 7 bytes technically. And so I'm quite happy with that solution. And it just the board just breaks out the bytes into, or the bits into each which one they correspond with, and that's it. Away it goes. And so what's nice about that method is that in changing the whole auto click feature to allow for not just clicks but mouse movements, I can just change from, instead of just 0 or 1 for on or off for auto click, I can do 0 for none, 1 for left click, 2 for move the mouse left, and 3 for move the mouse right, without changing any of the control scheme or really much else. So yeah, pretty happy about that. Coincidentally, on the subject of Apple, they spent the week blaming Android USB-C chargers causing overheating. Now they've announced a software update that will magically fix the hardware. Amazing. And Simon S63 says, I didn't see Apple blaming Android chargers, they were blaming some unsupported chargers. But I didn't take much notice though, because my 15 Pro Max is fine. Fair. And I thought Apple were blaming people who did not pay the extra for Apple chargers / cables. That's kind of my take, because, well, that's my understanding, because what I have seen is there's something to do with one of the pins in the USB-C port is not spaced right. Something. At least that's what I've read on to Tinterwebs. But yeah. My Minis forum having a problem when I'm using any browser. After 15 to 20 minutes it's lagging. So I've never had a Minis forum system, whatever, in, but generally speaking, lagging after a duration of time is normally a small handful of things. Temperature, especially of the processor, or there is some sort of memory leak or a system usage leak. So what I would do is use a program like Hardware Info, HW Info, to monitor your temperatures, especially on your CPU cores. CPU package normally is the name for that one. And I would also open Task Manager and keep it running in the background. And then when it starts to do that slowdown, have a look at Task Manager and see if there is really high usage on your CPU cores or your RAM or even your storage. That can sometimes be a problem. So it's normally one of those, I guess, 3-4 things. Temperatures, CPU utilization, RAM utilization, or storage. It's normally one of those. So cool that Apple finally invented USB-C for us. Yeah, and Joe says it was something like the spacing between pin 9 and pin 11 is too narrow. So, on unofficial chargers, it was causing shorts. That was causing it to overheat. The software fixes it, apparently. What is So USB-C has something like 20 pins in it. And what I want to do is look at the USB-C pin out. So pin, what do you say, pin 9 and pin 11? Ah, oh, right. Well, okay. Do you know if it was on the pros or the non-pros? So pin 9 is VBus, so 5 volts, and pin 11 or pin 10, well, pin 10 and 11 are the RX, the USB 3 transmission lines. So the thing is that the 15 Pro is connected over USB 3, well, 2 and 3, whereas the non-Pro is only connected over USB 2. So the middle pin, so that's pin 6 and 7. So it would make sense to me that it was the Pro, because if it is shorting between VBus and the RX lines, the receive lines, that would be injecting voltage into not just the host port, but also into the potentially the SoC, although I think they normally have a management chip in between, so more like the management chip would be getting a bit spicy. So yeah. It might have also been something like early units or certain regions worth of units, stuff like that, but yeah. Would a software fix just drop, draw, / drain on certain pins? So it's it would be VBus and the receive lines, possibly on both sides because it's identical. And so I don't know how you would do that, but yeah. There are China and India built 15s. Interesting. So it could be a plant difference, potentially. It's a possibility. Also, I have an RG Ally. My Mortal Kombat 11 is not launching. I've already uninstalled it and installed it on Steam, but it's not working. So, can you, when you say not working, what do you mean? Like, you launch it and nothing happens, you launch it and, you know, a splash screen shows up and then it disappears. Yeah, you gotta give us more than it's not working. Surely that's something that would have been tested before production. I've always assumed C was proprietary, not including data speeds, etc. But the connection should be pretty standard. So USB-C isn't, well, it's part of the USB consortium, and so I think you do have to license it if you're using it. I can't remember. It's not super proprietary. It's fairly open standard, which is why everything's built on it, and it's pretty standardized. Yeah. As for testing, I would assume so. Again, it might just be a supplier issue, or supplier and/or batch issue, and it might just be something that's not been picked up onto too closely. I launch it and it returns to Armory Crate. So it does bring up a splash screen, or it brings up the game to some degree before then closing. When playing YouTube, Firefox plays the audio slightly slow, desyncing the video over time. Fixable by clicking the time bar in the video, but only until that happens again. I think I've had that as well. Yeah, it's weird. Well, it is easy to blame Firefox. There is also some level of conspiracy theorist in me that says it's Google's fault. Because Google has a real habit of not playing nice with Firefox's engine, semi on purpose. Or more specifically, they develop features for the Chrome or Chromium engine, and then they don't care if it breaks in Firefox, and then Firefox or Mozilla has to scramble to fix what was otherwise working. Maybe similar to have display issues as it was either LG or Samsung. Software fixed it though. Fair. I mean, if software can fix it, that's cool. The whole point of them being made to use USB-C was to make it proprietary across the board. I think you mean standardized. But they seem to have found another loophole. I mean, yeah, they're also talking about they still want their MFI chips in the cables, which is ridiculous. Yeah. I guess I'm the only tinfoil hatter here, but I use Chromium for YouTube and it runs fine on Firefox. I block all the Google Analytics, etc. Where I can. Oh no, me too. Yeah. It's it's one of those, like, we've already lost the war, but you know, any modicum of privacy we can keep handy is always good. It appears the logo, the Mortal Kombat logo appears after 5 to 10 seconds. It returns to Armory Crate, but my other games are working fine. Like Tony Hawk and Firelight 64 and One Piece. So just to check, this isn't an emulated game. This is like the PC game, right? If so, generally speaking, those things are either caused by driver issues or by anti-cheat issues. Either permissions or that sort of thing. That is I can't really give you much advice. No, I bought it. Good. I can't really give you too much advice other than like the next thing I would do in this situation is just start Googling it, basically looking for other people with the same issue or with a similar issue on different games, and try the things that they're suggesting. But yeah, unfortunately, I believe my RG Ally has been collected, so I can't. Not that I have Mortal Kombat either, but it's not like I can test that for you, I'm afraid. And so yeah, it's normally anti-cheat or drivers, but you'll have to do a bit more research yourself, I'm afraid. I use Opera for its built-in VPN, though to be honest, I've never really looked into it all. I don't like Edge or Chrome. Funnily enough, Opera is Chromium based. So you're using the Chrome engine, or Chromium engine. So yeah. Also the built-in VPN. I'm not going to say that it's purely for data harvesting on their behalf, but if I were to hypothesize a reason why they would introduce a free VPN, that would probably be the top of the list of possible reasons. I have uBlock on for Firefox. I'll be honest, I've never used a VPN. I don't think this one even really works. Haven't a clue how to use it. Fair enough. Personally, I'd probably leave it off. But yeah. I like to use Opera and Firefox back in the day, but I just stick with the defaults now. Saves most issues and just get on. Fair enough. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 web browsers. Yeah. I was lucky enough not to be part of how governments will charge for using electric vehicles on the road. Every on a screen privacy, but to use the car, you have to agree to the car maker's terms of service. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, it, especially with the self-driving ones, you know, like the big T. But even like the Hyundai, you're still like there's still that element of connectivity. There's still that element of like remote access. Like if the car has the ability to remote access the car from an app, it's not your car. I know that's somewhat an inflammatory statement, but yeah, it's not your car. VPNs are for all the Linux ISOs. Exactly, yeah. Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, Vivaldi. Close. I have Chrome, Firefox, technically 2 Chromes with the profiles, but Opera GX, Opera, and Vivaldi. Screw Edge. All my homies hate Edge. Again, it's just a data harvesting tool for Microsoft. Not that Chrome isn't the data harvesting tool for Google, but I don't know. I don't know that I trust Google with my data less, but they already have so much of it, whereas Microsoft, I have just enough, like, you know, I've removed all the telemetry for Windows, you know. I do have a few Microsoft accounts that I use in my, like, you know, personal emails, but yeah. Terms and conditions, which includes access to data, i.e. odometer reasons. I say legislate for car maker to give access to mileage and charge on that, as they'll lose tax from petrol. Yeah, I mean, especially in the UK, like, to be clear, road tax isn't something that pays for the roads. Road tax is just another tax that goes into the big pot that they then, you know, divvy up, including for roads. So and then same with petrol tax. So realistically, it doesn't matter that much. And I think in the UK, we'll just have currently we have the newest road tax set up is by value of the car and then somewhat on their CO2 emissions. So EVs are still in a sort of good class, but they are. I would imagine things like either vehicle cost or vehicle weight will be the way that the UK government does it anyway. I think that I think we talked about mileage as a possible solution, and it was quite thoroughly struck down. That's about half the cost of the fuels. Issue of privacy is mute, as you have to agree to T&Cs make the car move. Yes, well that's what I mean. If the car has any sort of remote connection, you don't own the car. If it doesn't have a remote connection, if it's all local, there's no 4G and 4G 5G connectivity. There's a good chance that you do actually own the car. you do actually have, sort of final say, in the same way that, my car has a key, and while technically Audi could, uh, create a new key for my car, but then, you know, um, repossess it or something. I don't know. I bought it outright, so, um, but to gain access to it, that's a lot like theft and fraud. Whereas if you sign the terms and conditions to say, yes, Tesla or whoever can remotely access my car, Rugby, what's the white case in the background? It is an Evolve X. Good eye. It's the white Evolve X with an ASRock X67DE Carrara on the board in it and no graphics card. So yeah. I'd like a road tax to charge change to per mileage. I think they talked about it in the news lately. That would be good for me. I mean, it'd be great for me because I don't drive. But it depends on the cost per mile. Yeah. And I think it also, like, personally, that kind of seems like, well, A, it's legislative overhead, right? Because they'd have to, access your mileage, which in the UK you would just do via your MOT records, but still, you would have to have, access your mileage records or supply it, and then, whatever. Ish has a very good point, is that we essentially kind of already do, in the sense that the UK government taxes a very significant portion of our fuel bill, our petrol or diesel prices, and so you essentially already pay a tax per mileage based on the fuel you use. However, that one is, again, I would be kind of worried about the per mileage on road tax, just because it seems very easy for them to retroactively, or at a later stage, change the per mileage price. Whereas, in my current system, my car is still the old system where it's purely based on manufacturer supplied emissions data. So I pay like £300 a year or whatever, but that's it, and that's not going to change. Whereas if I was being billed per mile, some amount per mile, or more likely some amount per 1,000 miles, probably makes more sense. That is probably more likely it's easier for them to then change the deal at a later date. My £150 annual road tax is the same as buying 2 to 3 weeks of fuel. My £300 is worth, at current rate, probably, I think I fill up my tank maybe once a month at most, depending on what I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah, probably like 3 to 4 months worth of fuel. Talking to a guy I know from Singapore, he says he can't afford a new car. Turns out it costs like 80k plus just to get the right to own the car. They cap how many cars are on the road at about 900k. Crazy. Yes, they do. It's really expensive to own cars in Singapore. There's also a lot of very heavy restrictions on things like modifications, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, very expensive. It's also a relatively small space. Hello, Luca, and hello, where was I? Agent B, hello, how you doing? Did Andrew officially make it to 100% mad yet? I did, yeah. Same in urban Japan. Yes, and I believe that's why K cars are so popular in urban Japan. They're really cool. I like them a lot. You have to prove you can park it somewhere before you can buy it. Do you know that's not a bad shout? Yeah, that's not a bad idea, especially for some of the neighborhoods that don't have on-street parking. Ba 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 ba. Oh yes, your monitor. IPS is fine. Just want more resolution for general desktop tasks. I've been spoiled with my laptop display, and 1080p looks horrid now. Yeah, fair. Again, it also depends on budget, but generally speaking, I'd go for 27-inch 1440p. And there are a lot of good options. Gigabyte's M27Q and 27Q-X are great, but they're also not in stock anywhere anymore, which is annoying. LG's panels are normally fantastic, and then AOC do make some pretty decent ones. Although if you do want to stick with the same size, the Q24 G2A that I am reviewing, that I'm just that will be out on Monday. That is a fantastic option, and it's like £190 for a 165 hertz 1440p 24-inch IPS monitor. That's actually pretty decent. So yeah. Titan, just I assume you mean you're gonna tell me the specs, and you're gonna I can tell you about it. So yes, we only have a couple minutes before the stream's scheduled to end. Yeah, fire away. Also, if we don't get to it, feel free to jump in our Discord, which Chris has already helpfully linked in the chat, and head to the build support channel, where we can help you out there as well. Second vote here for 27-inch 1440p. I can never look at a 1080p again without puking after gaming on a 1440p. Yeah, the pixel density ain't great, innit? But yeah, it's still fine. It's fine. Fine. It's not. No. 34-inch 3440 or 4040 ultra wide. Same. That's what I've been playing Starfield on, yeah. With a 3060? What have I got in there? Is it a 3060? I think it is. Is it bad that I don't? It's bad that I don't remember. It's 3060, yeah. I think it's because I wanted the VRAM. And I was using the 3070 Ti. My TV is 42-inch 1080p plasma. Looks better than any 4K under £500. Okay. I mean, plasma is a very interesting panel tech. Don't even know if you call it a panel. But yeah, it's a rather interesting tech. It's actually really cool to. I had my in-laws have a plasma TV still, and I had my high-speed camera down for like at Christmas last year or something, and I took a quick clip of it, and it's really cool because it will pulse one color at a time. So it'll pulse, but it's not RGB either. It's like yellow, red, and green or something or other. But it'll pulse that, and it'll pulse, one of each color at a time, which your eye builds into one. But yeah, pretty cool. Is there any way for me to link the build to you? So actually, I think the best thing to do, because 9 o'clock is our usual sort of cutoff time. If you head over to the Discord, when you post it in there, one of the bots in our Discord will helpfully write out the PC part picker link. So that would be my recommendation. We can help you out there. But yeah, that's kind of that really. I'll have the Zima board review up tomorrow. please do check that out. And obviously the Q24 G2A monitor is on Monday, so check that out as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for kicking it with us for however long you've been here, and yeah, I hope you have a good week. Stay safe. Links in the description if you want to support my babbling and idiocy. And yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow for a video, Monday for a video, and next week for a stream. Bye guys.